Hello everybody, welcome and kumusta. Thank you for joining me. This is How, your occupational therapist, and welcome to OT Conversations. In this episode of OT Conversations, I would like us to have a talk and discussion about falls. That's very interesting because a huge attention is on falls. And looking back at some of the literature when I was studying, falls was never really a diagnosis. It is technically an effect of something else. And yet, in the United Kingdom, falls has become the main source of problem. It has become the core concern, falls. But in fact, if you review a person and you analyze what was wrong and what would have been the cause of falls, then you would fall on a certain diagnosis or a certain condition. And I think to address the falls, you want to minimize the falls. Fall is a result. Falls is an outcome of a situation. Falls is an outcome of an event or an outcome of how we looked after a patient, whether we managed safety or not. In the same way as low back pain for carers, for example. So low back pain is an effect of something else. Low back pain is because of either a moving and handling problem or faulty biomechanics when you are doing that. So that's why you would have a low back pain. So the cause is there. Falls is a cause. And a lot of things, there's a lot of focus on mechanical falls. So trip hazard, yes, understandably. If somebody has a trip, then yes, you would have a fall. But there are other things that will predisposes a person to falling. And it's always been the relationship between a person's ability to maintain their center of gravity within the base of support. For as long as the center of gravity is within the base of support, then there will be very, very little chance of falls. And there are mechanisms in the body that allows this. Let's start talking about the base of or the center of gravity. When somebody is standing, it'll be on S1, sacral regions, about 5 centimeters, 3 to 5 centimeters in front of S1, if I'm not mistaken. But correct me because I haven't reviewed this for a long time. It is there, right? So that is the base of support. And a person is able to maintain that base of support if a person is standing. So the base of support then will be those two legs. So the narrower the base of support, the chances are there is an increased chance where once this base of center of gravity goes out of the base of support, then there's an increased chance that a person will have to right themselves and correct their position. And if they're not able to do that, then that's when falls would come in. And that is why when you are using walking frame at the end of the day, yes, one is to supplement the weakness on the legs. The other one is basically to widen that base of support. Yeah. So when you're supplementing the weakness of the legs, you're supplementing it with the strength of the arms. So that's another thing. But then the base of support, as you can see, it's gone wider. So patient, there's little chance, provided that the legs are good, then there's little chance that the patient would fall. That's one. The other thing is, person has a walking stick, it's pretty much the same. The base of support just becomes a little bit wider. Now there is falls, and there is also a collapse. A collapse is when the base of support just goes and falls downwards. Yeah. So collapse could mean why is the next question. What could cause a person to collapse? When the tone is not there, all of a sudden the activation of muscles disappear, for example, then the person will collapse down. It's very seldom when somebody falls down because of a collapse that they would collapse just falling backwards. Normally, it's a slump down. The legs will buckle, and then everything just slumps down. It's just like a falling building. If you remember the Twin Tower, yeah, 9/11 Twin Tower. If you remember that, the building collapsed and it's down. It didn't fall sideways or frontways. It's down. So that's the collapse. So how does one collapse? Yeah. All of a sudden, the alertness plays into mind. Somebody would have a collapse if where would the alertness come from? It's the alertness that's generated by the brain, right? And so when the blood does not reach the brain, then you would have all of a sudden it shuts down everything that powers the somatic nervous system, which would have been the nerves that's coming from the brain, motor neuron. It just, no electricity, boom, power, shut down, everything collapses. Right, so that's one type. Unless there is a structural support. Sometimes a person would just collapse and the head would just fall down, but then the body itself has a structural mechanism that it aligns itself. I will talk about that at some point. So collapse is one. Usually if there is a heart problem where the heart has stopped supplying the brain of its blood supply, whether it's through an arrest, then that would cause a temporary interruption of blood supply up in the brain and it would collapse. And then the other thing would be a temporary, with some pacing concerns or rhythm concerns. So the heart normally should just be beating at a normal pace, at a normal rate, at a normal interval. So it should just be doing that regularly. But if it does or there is a skip, then every time that there is an interruption on that beating, that it will not supply the brain with the blood supply, and then somebody would lose consciousness, they'll go faint, they'll go a little bit dizzy, and then they will collapse. Okay? Orthostatic hypotension is another one that would affect this, or is also one factor for this. And when there is an orthostatic hypotension, what's happening? The blood pressure is not strong enough, so the chances of it reaching the brain, it doesn't pump hard enough, then it doesn't reach the brain, and so the person would feel fainty and then will collapse and will go clammy. You would have, again, the autonomic responses for this. You would have all the autonomic responses. Okay, so that's one. Now, say that there are no concerns with regard to the brain's blood supply and the heart is able to do this. But the other thing that is important for a person to maintain an upright posture would be the integrity of the muscles. Integrity meaning the strength should be there, right? There should be no pain, that the person should be able to bear weight on the upper limb. Integrity being, like I said, the strength. And the legs should be able to demonstrate an ability to do a co-contraction. So once the leg is in co-contraction, that's what it does, and you're able to maintain an upright posture. So the leg is one thing. The other thing would be the trunk should be able to maintain a co-contraction as well, which is an upright posture. And then, well, actually, this should have been one of the first things. The legs, the trunk, it should be okay. The head, the integrity and the position of the head is also very, very important when you're maintaining your balance and you don't want to fall. Because the head has its labyrinthine, and these labyrinthines, they're the ones that are the sensor, they're the gyroscope of the person. And it tells the person, it tells the person whether they are away from the base of support or not. Yeah, it's the one that holds everything in an upright position. And that is one beautiful thing. So that's important. The sensory integrity is one. Okay. I did say the muscular integrity. Okay. The legs needed to be there. They have to have the proper strength. The other thing is they have to be able to contract in a fast rate as well. And this is very important because these contraction of the muscles, they respond in reflexes such as protective extension. When somebody goes and falls, the ones that they would use to protect themselves to begin with would have been their legs. And walking, just to let you know, walking is a regular, and these are consistent and repeated protective extension or protective mechanism from falls. Every time you would fall forward, your base of support is out, the leg extends, and then it keeps leading forward. The leg goes in another and another and another. And you can see this in a child. When you move a child over, you can see that the person would just step after another, after another, after another, because the integrity of that reflex is there. Okay? So again, the muscles needed to be at the right integrity in terms of strength, in terms of rate of movement. Okay. And obviously the bones needed to be able to do that. They would have to be able to sustain the body as well. Problems with that would be an alignment on the bone, alignment on the muscles, pain. So these are the ones, because it's a different mechanism. But when somebody is in pain, then obviously they will not utilize that leg to put weight, and you would have a concern on that one. So you'll utilize compensatory strategies, which means you'll be using your upper lip. Okay. So that's one. So I did say the integrity of the heart and the lungs. Okay. So that's that. To have the brain have a regular supply of blood. The next thing would be the integrity of the muscles and the bones. In terms of strength, to be able to do a co-contraction to stabilize the entire structure. And then the other one would have been a rate of speed so that the body can actually move in response to equilibrium reactions. Okay. One equally important is the sensory capacity of the person. In the one sensory capacity, there are not just the one, there are a few sensory capacities. One would be the equilibrium sensation or the vestibular, and the sensors would be the labyrinthine organs in the inner ear. And they're the ones that will tell a person whether a person is upright or not. Okay. And I've seen this and I've felt this in many cases, particularly with vestibular disorders. You would have people who are who have impaired vestibular subsystem, that their upright posture is so impaired. And from my personal experience, I had a feeling where when I was like sideways and then moving, spinning around sideways like that. And so I can't even get myself in an upright position and posture because my body is saying that is not straight. This is straight. So it's really very important to know that. So that's the vestibular sensation. Okay. The vestibular sensation, it will have to be at a normal tone, if you might say it. It shouldn't be hyper, but it shouldn't be hypoactive as well. It should be normal reactive. When I think hyper reactive, meaning the slightest sensory movement, the slightest movement of the head, it will feel intense and so magnified. And if it's hyporeactive, even if the person does it, person doesn't know that it is happening. So that's again another concern. It needs to be just at the right time or the right level. So the other one is sensation would have been the proprioceptors and the kinesioreceptors. And this would be the muscle spindles, Golgi tendon organs, Pacinian corpuscles around the muscles as well. These are all sending some information and tone information to the cerebellum. And again, that's integrated as well with the and the visual subsystem can help because, again, visual anchoring is something that we just normally do. We know when we're upright and we're seeing something that is at the upright posture and position. Okay. So what do we have so far? If we are to make a summary of things, so we have the integrity of the heart and lungs, because that's important in the mechanism of maintaining the electrical impulse that's sending through the body. We need to have a good structure of the body so that everything is in alignment. And then we need to have active muscle activation as well in terms of the strength, particularly when it comes to cold contraction and particularly when it comes to the speed and activation. And then you need to have a good sensory capacities, particularly that of the vestibular subsystem, the visual subsystem, the prop as well. Okay. The other thing would be the reflexes are there and it needs to be at play as well. Because normally reflexes should have it will rely still on the sensory organs, and it will rely on the effector muscles. So what reflexes are at play? Definitely the righting reaction, meaning if the person's position, the head and neck goes out in alignment, it will naturally align itself with the body. Okay. The body righting is also another thing. Or when the body tips over, it just rights itself. And then the next thing would be the protective equilibrium reactions is another one, where once you move, there will be associated, if it's too much and it can't right anymore, then there will be an equilibrium reaction where the upper limb or the lower limb will have to adjust. And again, what it's doing is that it is moving, it's widening the base of support, okay, to meet that base. And then the last one would have been a protective extension. And this is the last mechanism of the body. When they fall, they will have to protect themselves with the upper limb. Yeah, so that would have been the protective extensions. That's the higher level. Okay, and once you have these things, you are likely to prevent the fall. Now, knowing these, what can we do? Right? The base of support, let's look at one after another. The heart, the lungs, the blood pressure needed to be addressed. Okay? Whether it's done via medication that will make sure that the blood pressure is at play, that's fine. What can you do? Right? The blood pressure somehow is influenced by the core tone of the body. You know, you have to anticipate, the body needs to anticipate things when they move. If the body is moved passively by another, if you are asked to be sat up straight away, all of a sudden, when the body is just not preparing for it, then all of a sudden the body is not anticipating it, then it will just wait for it to respond. And this is where the orthostatic hypotension kicks in, right? So I have had a tutorial teaching about the orthostatic hypotension. One would have been anticipation. The one would be core and tensing, because once the person knows what they need to do, then the body itself adjusts itself based on the demand that it's going to be, where it's going to be put at. Okay, so that's one. Address that. We can't do much. Okay, how do you want to do that? Again, just basic activities that will enable the heart to be raised a tad bit. So before sitting them up, you want to make sure that you do a little bit of talking. They need to be alert. You need to have a willful movement for the body, because the more a body would move in preparation, the gross activities, particularly the legs and the upper limb and the trunk, when you move them first, all limbered up, okay, the body would be in preparation and would be ready to move. And that's the same thing with the head. Okay? It's not just the arms, the legs. The arms, the legs, it improves the blood pressure. It raises it up. Okay. Now the movement and the tone on the movement, something that people would be doing, and then the head is something that needs to move as well. Okay. Just be mindful of that. So that is that in terms of sensation, really. So one is there. Now we're preparing the muscles. How do you want to prepare the muscles? You have to stimulate it. Again, that's awakening the somatic nervous system. And when you're waking up the somatic nervous system, you need to stimulate it either through manual handling, vibratory input, electrical impulse, before you get the person moving. And in therapy, that would have been called the adjunctive therapy or enabling activity. So awaken the somatic nervous system, especially if they're in critical care. Now, the writing reactions, once the person is sitting down and you want to prepare them to standing, again, do not rush it. What you want to do is you want to make sure that every system is at play, particularly the vestibular subsystem. And how do you move the vestibular subsystem? You have linear movement, forward and back. You would have side to side. You would have angular movement. These are the many ways. And the most complicated one would have been a rotatory stimulation. And with the rotatory, how do you do that? When you're sitting down, that would be, and when you're lying down, you can just practice moving the head left and right, okay? Forward and back. Bounce the head on the pillow. It's okay. That's functional, but that's stimulation. That's a normal thing that we do. You would look left and right, look and right, and then move the shoulder, look and right, and then move the shoulder. You can go and then do that on side lying. So you can actually, when a person is on side lying, just get the ear and the shoulder together, forward and back, right? Lying and prone, if they can, if it's safe to do so, okay? Once the person is in sitting position, the next line would be a supported sitting position. What can you do with the head and neck? It's the same thing. Lean forward and back. And then now you can integrate the movement of the trunk. Because once you're moving the trunk, then it's much better. A person will now have to feel this movement. So once the person feels that this is the movement, then you will desensitize the hyper-reactive vestibular subsystem, okay? Once a person is sitting down, another good way to stimulate the vestibular system would be to move them. If they're on a wheelchair, that's very good because you're getting that linear stimulation. If they're on a steady and if it's safe to do so, that they have their postural control, move that because that will stimulate the linear vestibular subsystem along with the ocular, I can't remember the actual term for that. So that would be that. And then another thing would be, so that's that. Now, when people are standing now, right? Now you're dealing with the legs. You have to make sure, the trunk. Don't forget about the trunk. The repetition of the trunk movement into doing a slouching movement, into extending, slouch and extend, slouch and extend. What you're doing there is that you are stimulating those back muscles, the longissimus dorsi, longissimus capitis. But most of the time, the deep muscles of the back, they're there for structural stability. So they can only respond to proprioceptive stimulation and a little bit of rotation. And it gets tensed. Every time you do a rotation, it tenses itself up. It's a self-checking thing. It's a beautiful design. Okay. The next thing is when a person is standing up, again, that leaning forward and back is something that you need to do. When you're standing up, what you're doing is obviously you're strengthening the legs. It's okay to stand. It's okay to take a first step and back. You need to take time. Yeah. This, especially if you're doing a rehabilitation, you want to take time, just one step at a time. Take your time. Forget about the watch. Just do it, stand, repeat it over and over. And what you want to do is you let the person be in control of the time, right? The person should be in control of that time, meaning, are you okay? Do you want a bit more? So we stand. Okay, let's do it. Do you want to progress a little bit more? Okay, so let's do stand and then back. Take a first step and then back. Move the legs up and then down. So those are the few things that you can actually do. Okay. And then when walking, then that's fine. It's always good to be in a parallel bar because you don't have to hold the person. The person will just practice it. Yeah, it's not neurology. So even if it's neurology, you want the person to practice it first, do it over and over and over again, and then you will refine the movement afterwards. People will not be dependent on things. Take your time. It does take some time. And the next would be the walking frame and then the gradation of the adaptive aids. Again, what you wanted to do is to minimize that the base of support from being very wide all the way to now you're minimizing it to a point where you don't need a walking aid anymore. Now, there is a challenge for us and there is a temptation for us to actually have a person not have adaptive aids straight away. If the person feels safe to do so, fine. Why not? It's okay. That's the ultimate objective. However, if you're dealing with frail patients and elderly patients, and it's taking some time, mind you, these adaptive aids are here not just for independence, not because of difficulty, but to address the parameter of safety. Okay, so use an adaptive aid. Why? Because the person needs to be safe. And that is the first priority. Okay. All right, guys. And so there you go. I hope you learned a little something. So we talked about things that would cause a person to fall. And we looked at the parameters of the integrity of the cardiovascular system, the muscular system, and then the sensory system. And once these things are all at an interplay, or they're interplaying with one another, and then you can use it functionally. And hopefully, with the information that you have, you should be able to deliver a better therapy where it is now much more focused on the patients rather than on based on your own schedule as a therapist. All right? Okay. Let the patients be at the core of what we do. All right, guys. Well, thank you. I hope you learned a little something from this very, very short session today. I wouldn't say it's it's just a reasonable amount, almost 30 minutes. If you learned something, talk to your friends about it, discuss these things, pass on the knowledge, have a discussion over a cup of tea, learn together, grow together. Just remember, anything you do matters and has an outcome. Until next time, bye.